Medieval Europe is often imagined as a world of castles, knights, and noble quests. Yet behind those towering stone walls existed a harsh and unforgiving system of punishment, designed not only to penalize criminals, but to instill deep and lasting fear in everyone who witnessed it. Justice in the medieval world was often swift, highly public, and merciless, as rulers and authorities believed that fear was the most effective and reliable way to maintain order and obedience within society. Punishments were commonly carried out in central locations such as town squares or near city gates, ensuring that every passerby, traveler, and resident would witness the consequences of breaking the law. One of the most common punishments was the pillory, where a person was locked into a wooden frame and left exposed to public humiliation for hours or even days, completely at the mercy of the surrounding crowd. This punishment was often used for minor crimes such as theft, fraud, or dishonesty, yet the shame, ridicule, and public exposure could leave emotional scars that lasted far longer than the punishment itself. Some punishments were far more brutal and intentionally designed to cause prolonged suffering, including devices like the Iron Maiden, a metal enclosure lined with inward-facing spikes. When the doors of this device were slowly closed, the spikes would pierce the victim's body without immediately killing them, ensuring a painful and extended ordeal. Another notorious method was the rack, where a person's limbs were gradually stretched using ropes and mechanical force, often causing joints to dislocate one by one. This technique was frequently used during interrogations, as victims would often confess to crimes they did not commit, simply to bring an end to the unbearable pain. One of the most terrifying punishments was breaking on the wheel, where a person's bones were systematically shattered using heavy blows from a hammer. After the process, the victim was often left displayed in public for hours or even days, serving as a grim and unforgettable warning to anyone who passed by. Burning at the stake was another well-known punishment, often used during periods of religious conflict, especially against those accused of heresy or witchcraft. The condemned individual was tied to a wooden post surrounded by logs, which were then set on fire in front of a gathered crowd, often accompanied by prayers or sermons. In some regions, drowning was used as a form of punishment, particularly for individuals accused of practicing witchcraft or other forbidden acts. If the accused person floated, it was considered proof of guilt. Yet if they sank, they were declared innocent, although in many cases it was already too late to save them. In certain cases, criminals were punished by having parts of their bodies removed, such as hands, ears, or fingers, leaving permanent physical marks. These marks served as lifelong reminders of their crimes, often condemning individuals to a future of hardship, social rejection, and isolation from their communities. Quartering was one of the most extreme and horrifying punishments, typically reserved for those accused of treason against the state or ruler. The condemned person was tied to 4 horses, each driven in different directions, resulting in a slow and devastating tearing of the body. Such executions were carefully staged as public spectacles, intended to demonstrate the absolute power of authority and discourage any form of rebellion. Executioners played a central role in medieval justice, carrying out sentences with precision, yet often living as isolated figures on the edges of society. They were feared and avoided by most people, yet their skill determined whether a punishment ended quickly or prolonged suffering unnecessarily. Water torture was another method used during interrogations, forcing victims to endure extreme physical distress through controlled drowning sensations. Under such overwhelming pressure, many individuals confessed to crimes they had never committed, simply to escape the agony. Some prisoners were confined in iron cages that were suspended in public spaces, leaving them exposed to harsh weather conditions for extended periods. This form of punishment combined physical suffering with constant humiliation, as passers-by could observe the prisoner at any time. Dungeons within castles were dark, damp, and cold, offering little to no comfort for those imprisoned inside their stone walls. In some cases, punishment involved prolonged starvation, where prisoners were given minimal food or water, leading to a slow and painful decline. Execution by sword was considered relatively swift and was often reserved for individuals of higher social standing. Despite its relative speed, such executions still attracted large crowds who gathered to witness the final moments. Medieval societies strongly believed that harsh punishments would deter crime and maintain strict order within communities. However, many historians now suggest that these punishments also served as powerful displays of control rather than effective prevention. Different regions across Europe developed their own unique methods of punishment, shaped by local laws and traditions. Over time, new philosophical ideas began to emerge, questioning the morality and effectiveness of extreme punishments. Some cities gradually reduced the use of torture, marking the early stages of legal reform and change. Greater importance was placed on evidence rather than forced confessions, leading to a more structured legal process. Public executions slowly became less frequent as societal attitudes toward justice and punishment began to shift. Although the medieval period is often remembered for its brutality, it also laid important foundations for future legal systems. Today, historians study these practices to better understand how human society has evolved over time. By examining this past, we gain a deeper appreciation for fairness, justice, and human rights in the modern world. What was once considered normal now appears shocking, highlighting how dramatically societal values have changed. Many of the locations where these events occurred are now preserved as historical landmarks visited by people from around the world. Museums carefully preserve these artifacts as reminders of a darker chapter in human history. They encourage visitors to reflect on the suffering endured by people during those times and the lessons learned since. Remembering this history allows us to better appreciate the importance of justice, compassion, and humanity in today's world.